this life ain't fair. And I know that you're going nowhere. But don't blame me for what you've done. Cause I know that you are having fun.
Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast, exposing the real estate secrets your agent doesn't want you to know. Here's your host, Tom Clary.
Well, don't you just walk away. That's when I'll say.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's time for the Clarified Realty Podcast. I'm Tom Clary. I'm your host. I'm a real estate agent here in lovely Los Angeles, California. And I'm here with my forever co-host, Ron Bruno. Ron, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Tom.
Good. Do we got any news going on out there?
We do.
Good.
We're gonna jump right into it.
That's what you're here for, Ron.
Here we go. All right. So this is what I came across Friday as I was doing some leisurely reading. Hope you had a nice Easter.
I had a lovely Easter. Thanks for asking. You know, we didn't really do the Easter thing.
No?
No. I mean, the kids were doing an egg search. What do they call it?
Easter egg hunt?
Easter egg hunt, thank you.
Or an egg search.
Or egg search. That's what they call it where I come from. No, the Easter egg
Sean
hunt.
Spicer says it that way,
Does
too.
he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And no, we had they had a lovely time at their school. That means mom and dad don't have to do it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right? Because they're 4.
There you go.
I'm probably going to get all sorts of comments now. Like, how did you not have an egg search for your kids?
And they do Christmas at the school too, but you can get,
Yeah, right?
You can rely on the school to do that for you too.
That's what I'm paying you for. Absolutely. So, but yeah, you have some news?
I do. So here's the article. So it says housing trends will keep U.S. interest rates suppressed. Okay. So this was from Bloomberg. This came out April 13th. So I think that was Friday. So it says, if we're all downsizing, who's upsizing? So the whole idea is baby boomers, they represent the majority of the population, right? There's no question to that.
Right, just numbers.
And they're getting older, and they also represent the largest percentage of homeowners. Right? So after the war and all of that, they went in and, had kids and they started buying homes, right? So that trend continued to go up.
Right.
Well, at some point, they're going to sell. Right, because they can't live forever. And what's going to happen is they will be selling to whoever wants to buy it. Now, the article is sharing that
it's really rough to sell to people who don't want to buy it.
Well, and that's the challenge, right? So that's the biggest challenge. So what they're saying is that because the next generation that's coming up, where they're starting to get into those formative years where they're forming families and all that, the millennials, they're not buying as great as the baby boomers were. So if it's going to be a challenge. So what they're saying is that you have debt-laden college graduates, they'll be renting longer, smaller U.S. family sizes, the preference to stay in urban environments. Actually, I thought this was kind of interesting. It said shoddy homes and McMansions built in the last 25 years, so they're not holding their value.
Okay.
And then also millennials postponing traditional household formation. So when I think about this, I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, because if you don't have a large market of people selling and you don't have a lot of people buying, it's going to keep the home prices artificially higher for some time. It's also going to keep the supply really low.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, I mean, this is my viewpoint on this, is that we're going to be seeing a lot more than we were kind of chatting before that. You were saying 12 to 24 months. I think it's going to even go longer than that, because
you're talking about any potential correction.
Correct. Here's the problem. I think that people haven't even grasped how much the baby boomers don't want to sell. I mean, it's like a desert out there. In terms of,
well, where are they going to live?
Well, exactly.
Right. So if they're going to sell, then okay, great. I love the fact that I can get my, $700,000 of equity out of the house, but where are they going to live?
Well, it's psychology. Okay. They've got basically over the past 20, 30 years, they climbed the property ladder. Okay.
Correct.
They kept on going up, trading up. oh, this is a nice cushy house. This is great for my family. Let's trade up. And now they're in these houses that basically they can support now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not like there's some sort of, there's, the market hasn't corrected in such a way where it's like they're crashing. Like there's, oh my God, we got to sell.
Right.
They can actually stay in there for a very long time. And they don't want to go to the old folks home. They don't want to go to the single apartment. I've heard, people talk about, I went looking for houses, and we were thinking about downsizing, but do I really want to live in a single apartment?
Right.
I'm going to be miserable.
Right.
Yeah, it's on a golf course, but I don't care. So I think that people haven't even grasped how deeply this goes. And then on top of it, hearing about the millennials, doing a little kind of research this last week as well on that topic, I'm getting the vibe that it's not so much, and also talking to Daniel Weingarten during our happy hour.
Yeah, he's the comedian.
But he's a millennial with a really good point of view, with kind of like his finger on the pulse of what's going on with that generation.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that they don't want to buy, or that there's some sort of aversion to, I'm just going to rent. Yes, debt is, nobody's saying that the debt is not, that they have from school or from, mostly from school.
Right.
Is not hindering them from getting out there. But what I think is really kind of keeping them from getting into the market is that they can't really enter it at these price points. And you're not going to get that until you have more supply out on the market.
That's right. I mean, until we start lending where someone makes $30,000 to $50,000 on an entry-level salary and there's, no money down. Yeah, that's going to be a challenge.
Well, and even out in the market right now, I'm seeing anything from, $500,000 down. It goes in a day. I mean, it is like a blink of an eye.
Oh, yeah.
With multiples. So nothing is, this market is not slowing down in terms of that price range, which is really that entry price range. So, we've talked about the stalemate before, and this really isn't news to us because we've been chatting about the stalemate, and this just kind of solidifies what we've been saying. The baby boomers aren't moving out, the millennials aren't moving in. So they have no place. They're in basically a holding pattern around the airport.
Right, exactly. And a follow-up article to that. So there was another article that came out. This one says scarce housing inventory is a market disruptor. And this was under the Scotsman's Guide. And this actually offers some potential solutions, which I thought that was kind of cool.
Sure.
So what it says is, two things need to happen to ease the housing shortage in the U.S. First, we need to build more homes. Right. So after the last recession, there was a significant slowdown in new homes being built.
And by the way, our guest today, I really want to touch a bit on that topic because he deals with basically vacant land and building homes on it. So as part of what he does. But of course, build more houses. Duh.
Yeah, and it's saying right now we're only building homes to about 65% of the long run average. So we're 35% below the average of the the typical construction of homes. On top of that, it's saying that we need federal, state, and local governments to work together, develop policies, and make it easier to build housing in areas where we need it most. Right, so that's a good idea. Yeah. So and then also, we need existing homeowners to put their homes on the market.
Yeah, but you can't put a gun to a person's head and do that.
You can't, but what you can do is you can play with the levers, right? So This one says you can reduce the capital gains tax for all properties where it's either investor or owner occupied. And then also you can also play with you can play with the levers in terms of getting more people qualified to buy a home, so that increases the supply even more, which entices the sellers. The market keeps going up and up, and they okay, I've got to do it. I've got to sell.
If I don't do it now, when am I going to do it?
Right, exactly.
Right, but then we've also kind of had a conversation about going too far that direction is what got us into trouble the last time.
That's right. So that's one of the biggest challenges is you get into a market where you rise to a certain level and then all of a sudden you're not getting that growth, and politicians, they want to see growth, so they say, let's scale back and let's take away
the lever that I think is the most
regulation, let's deregulate and let's let it keep going.
Well, and the lever I think that they really can start yanking around on that I think is a very interesting one. And we talked about this before in terms of the Trump administration coming in, is really kind of loosening up on those regulations in terms of zoning, in terms of, things, making sure that people can build easily.
That's right.
That will actually make a difference in this whole market.
That's right. And we talked about it in the first episode. Anytime that information that we received is counter to what we believe in our heart of hearts, I will personally let you know if I see lending that is just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where, the ninja loans, no income verification, any of those things come into play.
Right.
I will let you know when we start to see those things.
Right.
Because that's where you get into trouble.
Yeah. And speaking of developing houses and all that, I think that now is kind of the perfect segue to bring in our guest, because I think that that's really kind of the domain of when an investor goes in and starts looking to build homes, he needs to start with land. And so I want to introduce my guest today. It's Zack King. Zack is an agent also in the Calabasas Keller Williams office. And the reason that I wanted him to come in today is that he has a very specific specialty, and that is vacant land. A lot of folks don't really think about vacant land unless you're a developer or an investor or a speculator, but it's a really fascinating topic, and he is really an expert on the little nuances of getting those deals done. So, Zack, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So, before we kind of get deep in with every guest, we just kind of let everybody know kind of what's your backstory? Like, what's your history? Where did you come from? What the heck? Why did you choose vacant land?
Okay.
What did it choose you?
I think it was mutually
It was a mutual choice.
When I've been in real estate and construction for close to 20 years now. In the construction field when I was younger, and then I went into landscape development, and I worked for a company that worked with developers building out all over Las Vegas and
Las Vegas, really?
And the entire country, really.
Wow.
But primarily Las Vegas. So I worked with a lot of developers, understood their lingo and how they did things. And when I started to transition to real estate, it made sense. I mean, my family owned some land in Southern California, so I had some knowledge about it in that way. But really, when I went and approached real estate, I really liked the idea of what wasn't there and imagining what could be there.
Creating something there in that space.
Creating something new. And I am, as I'm sure you know, and the article kind of touched on it, there's an enormous, insane housing shortage.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles in particular. And the way I look at it, the only way to create new housing is to build on the vacant land that's there.
Right.
Because if you tear down a house and build another house, well, you've just created one unit.
Yeah.
Even if you take two single family houses and build 12 units, those two people still need to live somewhere. So you're not creating as many new units as you are when you're just building on vacant land. And it's challenging, and it lets me go throughout the entire city of LA and county of LA at times and almost need to know all the product type that's out there. I need to know the rental rates in an area in case somebody wants to build an apartment building, the condo sales, if its best use is mixed use, what kind of other retail would work in that site, things like that. And I'm fascinated by real estate and just love real estate. So the more of an excuse I have to learn more about it, the better. I mean, and then
Sure.
Keeps me up to date on what's going on as far as different areas in the city, what's emerging, what's being built, what might be built.
No, it's a good question in terms of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, when I think about Los Angeles, it's this metropolis. It's, all this packed space, all these houses all packed together and all that. Where's the vacant land?
Well, there's different spots throughout. And actually, if you look at Los Angeles and compare it to other cities, especially back east, I mean, we're a wide open mass. I mean,
Yeah.
What's going on in the city of LA is regentrifying and an enormous just change of what people want and are looking for in where they live. They want to be closer to where they live. That's
Yeah.
why, I mean, the article also spoke about building more houses. Well, great, but if you think about where land to build 200 houses would be,
Yeah, right.
you're in like Palmdale or somewhere out there.
Well, Lancaster, yeah.
Quite as you've seen, people really don't want to live out there. They don't want to drive.
No.
They don't want to spend 4 hours a day in their
On
car.
in the
They
traffic.
would rather live somewhere closer by.
Yeah.
And live in a smaller place.
Right.
So a lot of those factors are going in. There's a lot of regentrification because those areas people are trading off and saying, I'll live in a smaller house in a neighborhood that's maybe questionable.
Yeah.
And then but it's only a 10-minute drive to commute.
It's that convenience is worth it to them.
Yeah. And I think that's a great deal of what's going on with millennials. And you factor that in with also in those infill type sites, you would think, okay, well, you need to build a for sale product, not just apartments, which would be condos. And a little known fact is developers don't want to and can't really build condos that easily because you have to have a 10-year warranty on any new construction product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
To get insured to build condos because there's so many units and so many different people that turn over and everything.
Right.
There is I might be a little bit between 90 and 120% chance that you will be sued throughout that 10-year period.
I could believe that.
So the insurance on it just
astronomical
is very difficult. So you see more and more rental projects coming up.
Right.
Which is great in the sense that at least it's creating more units, but you're not seeing those for sale units of people who actually want to buy and be a homeowner.
Right.
So I think that has a large impact of what's going on as far as inventory wise.
Right.
Because we're seeing more rental inventory come on, but not as much for sale products. And in my opinion, that would be the reason why.
Now, it's interesting that when I was doing my research for this, and I want to pull this fact up, basically, I was reading an article that said that only 30 years ago, so not that long ago, right? So when I was 17 years old, so I just aged myself, but 1 in every 3 homes was owner-built. I had no idea that there was that. Now, that's nationwide, of course, probably not necessarily an example of Los Angeles, but still, what do you think? Do you think there was some sort of change of people just didn't want to go through that hassle anymore? Go through the, waiting for the house to be built. What do you think changed in terms of, because now it's, I want to buy a house that's already built. I want to,
Right. As I say, to anybody looking to sell land, I get a lot of calls from people who want to build their own home. Most of them buy an existing home because it's a very lengthy process.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. As far as 30 years ago, I would wonder if there was the same amount of tract homes being built and things like that, where the new product is created for you.
Right. Which is, I would assume, a slightly different audience. Basically, you've got the people who, I want to build this with my own 2 hands, and you must get some people contacting you about that.
Tons of people.
But while we're here, how realistic is that?
To build your own home.
Like I'm going to buy this 2 acres here in Topanga Canyon.
It's a challenge in the sense that you have to really know or have a realtor or architect who's walking you through that process.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of land out there that looks extremely attractive and well priced and oh my God,
this is lovely. I love it. I put my hammock right there and I can.
You think, well, and look, it's only this much and the houses in this area are 4 times as much. Assume that then your cost of construction will be that much. You'll have equity when you're done, but you won't have a windfall.
Right.
Because somebody would have bought it if there was. And there's just a lot of ins and outs, especially when you talk about Topanga Canyon and through the whole Santa Monica Mountains in the
coastal
commissions,
right?
as well as the unincorporated LA County has a lot of different environmental things and other issues. There's specific ridge lines that you cannot build on. And for instance, I looked at one property with people who were looking to build their own home.
Yeah.
They actually just closed a week ago on an existing home that they decided to buy instead.
They went the other direction.
Because, and this was part of a quick story to tell you kind of these pitfalls that you can find.
Right.
We went up to a property in the Calabasas Mountains. It's beautiful. It was well priced. We met with the listing agent. She told us about an easement that is being worked out, but that's nothing to be concerned with, and everything like that.
And also, guys, just because I don't know my audience, just an easement. Just describe an easement so they understand that.
Okay. An easement is somebody having the right to pass through or go through your property. It's recorded. It might be for a driveway so that they can gain access to their own property that's behind yours, or for water lines or utility lines, things like that. It's very common to have them.
It's just like the ability for them to use part of your land, basically, to get to their land or to...
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That would be a very good explanation.
Right.
So it all looked on the up and up. We all thought that this seemed like a great property for them, and we've been looking for a while. So I went to the county to double check things, and it turned out it's on what's considered a significant ridge line.
Hmm.
You can't build anywhere within 100 feet of that ridge line.
Oh my gosh.
The property reaches 100 feet further, but that is on a slope that you would never be able to build on.
Wow.
So you have to be very careful with whom you're listening to and working with to make sure that they know the right questions to ask.
Yeah.
Because had I not been there and asked, I mean, they were ready to buy the place.
Sign
right
on
away.
a dotted line. Yeah.
So I think that has a lot to do with it too. There's a lot of people who buy a piece of land to build their dream home, and then find out later they can't build what they had wanted to. So they go and try and sell it. And that's really unfortunate to me, and something that
Now, when it's someone is like, let's say that, all those things be damned, I'm going to build my house here. I've heard that it's actually usually more expensive if you start with just vacant land. Is that correct, or is that?
Well, again, because the majority of people I work with who actually go through and purchase the land are developers,
right? And
they have kind of a set fee. Construction costs can skyrocket very easily, because you get your base construction costs to build walls, your foundation, and everything from there, and then your finishes from there on can go way out of control, because it all depends on your personal taste, what you want to do, and you've gone that far to pick the property, to go through the permitting process, and you're going to build your dream home. You want it to be exactly what you want it.
Right. If I'm going to start from scratch, I might as well do it the entire thing the way I want it.
Do it perfectly, just like you've always dreamed, and that can get expensive depending on your dreams.
Right. So how would you consider vacant land transactions different from just a regular residential? Like, where do you see the key differences between me going out and buying a house that's on a street that, somebody else is selling, right? It's already built, it's there, I'm looking at it, compared to, I'm going to buy this land?
Well, there's a tremendous amount more of unknown with vacant land. The biggest differences, I think, is the inspections and what they entail, the length of time they take, and what you're really learning from them.
Right. Actually, I was going to talk about that. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that now in terms of what are the kind of inspections that you like when you see a vacant land? I want to do this. I want to do that inspection. I want to do this inspection. Which inspections are you think are the keys that really give you the information that get the ball rolling?
All right. It depends on the area a little bit, but the definite first thing you'd want to do is get a soils report to make sure it's on good soil, that doesn't have anything wrong with it that will create a larger cost to you. In the Topanga Canyon or any area that needs a septic, you would want to do
perc?
A perc test.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
To make sure that you can put a septic system in. And
because there's no guarantee the sewer is going to reach you, basically.
Right. Yeah. It's especially in areas where the majority of people have septic.
Right.
Assume you're going to need septic.
Right.
And throughout the city of LA, through the hills, you'll want to do a baseline hills, a slope band analysis. which is a matter of judging by the slope and the area of the lot, determining how much you're allowed to build on it.
Okay, got it.
And any architect can do that for you, but you definitely want that done and a soil report if it's on any type of a slope.
Yeah.
Which, even if your property isn't on a slope, it's whether it's that area is designated to be a hillside area.
Yeah.
So you might be on a property that's totally flat and be like, well, this isn't on a hillside area, and it is because it's designated as a hillside area.
Right.
So those would be the most important things. Any soil report takes the minimum 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
So given, as you know, from a home inspection,
Yeah.
it can take anywhere from 1 to 7 days. Like
Right.
you can get somebody out there pretty fast and you'll have the results right away within a day
2 to
or
3
two.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll turn that around.
Which is tremendously different. And that's why when you're writing an offer for land or something, if it's shorter than 45 days, they might as well be asking for 7 days for inspections, because there's nothing new you're going to learn
Right.
in between those two times. You can meet with cities and you can talk to them, but you're not going to have any concrete evidence. And meeting with the city or county or planning and building and safety, I think, is extremely important,
Right.
because they'll never be able to tell you for sure you can do something.
Yeah. Nobody wants to put their neck on the
Yeah.
line and
It's
say,
re-
"Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you can
But-
totally do that."
But they'll tell you if you can't do what you want.
Right.
If
Right.
it's
They're
like-
okay with saying no.
If it's way out there, they'll be like, no.
Yeah, you're crazy. Yeah.
So that's beneficial just in kind of ruling things out. I know there's I get a lot of calls, especially for lesser expensive land, about putting tiny homes on them.
Oh yeah, that's that's like this
it's
big
a
new thing.
huge craze.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because you would think, well, what a great way to put more units on. You have to be very careful. Different cities and counties have minimum sizes for a house to be considered a house, or for a unit to be something you can live in.
Interesting.
And most of them are right around 500 square feet,
All right.
which I believe, from watching HGTV, the tiny homes
The tiny
only
home
go
thing.
up to 450 to be considered a tiny home.
Ah.
So there's actual rules in place that
Right.
make you not be able to do one.
You know, it's funny with the tiny homes thing. I think one of the key things that they're really trying to incorporate into that is to be kind of eco-friendly. Like that's part of the whole.
Yeah,
you know,
I would
it's
say that.
self-contained, and you know, I'm doing all my and if I'm correct, from what the research I've kind of done, you also do a lot of the eco-friendly kind of stuff as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm a certified eco broker, and I always wanted things to be environmentally sound and everything like that. Most of the rules in LA City as well as LA County make you have to be right around I think it's a gold level LEED certification, which means that it's environmentally friendly. So the rules are in place, at least in this city,
Right.
to kind of force that along.
And for what? For new construction?
For any new
Got
construction.
it. Okay.
yeah.
Got it. So when you look at you're looking at land, how are you bringing that side of your brain into it? Is there any way that you're telling your clients like, oh, and you should be doing this or you should be doing that in terms of being eco-friendly?
That's a very good question.
That's why I asked it, Zach.
Well, you always wanted to go flow with the environment and what's there.
Yeah.
As far as bringing in environmental aspects of it, I always encourage people to do solar panels because they make a lot of sense, especially when you're building from the ground up.
Yeah.
From the start.
Might as
and
well put 'em in.
incorporating everything.
Right.
There's different bonuses as far as being able to build more if you incorporate things like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when we're just starting to look at land and I'm kind of not getting to the environmental aspect of it yet, and just analyzing what they would like to build, what their dream home is, or dream project, if it's not just a home and they want to build an apartment, and whether or not this site is the right site that will allow that. You know, if they want
Right.
to build a 7,000 square foot house and they're looking at a 6,000 square foot lots next to a bunch of single story houses, that's probably not your best bet. Let's keep looking and find the right house, the right location for your house, not just a location for your house. And I think that's the thing I would put forth before anything else.
Right.
Like, a lot of people want to just talk about, well, show me the land you have, what land's available. But to start with, it's all about what they want to build.
Yeah.
And then I can show them what's available, because
yeah.
otherwise they'll get excited about something they can't do anything with, or they'll get discouraged.
And that brings me to my next kind of topic, which is really kind of, you kind of mentioned going to building safety and all that kind of thing, but really kind of looking at the zoning and what can really be done in those places, that property. How do you approach that in terms of finding out what's the highest and best use, or what's the, what can you do here, and is that the best use for that property?
Absolutely. The city of LA has a fantastic website called Zemas that will tell you all the zoning and all the information. ZIMAS.org, I believe.
Okay.
And that tells you all the zoning for a particular property, as well as the zoning around it. That doesn't necessarily tell you the best use,
right? Because
the city of LA hasn't updated their zonings in 60 years.
Oh, Jesus.
So there's a lot.
That does not surprise me in the least.
Well, and it's interesting because the beginning of March, they just had those elections, and there was a Measure S.
Right.
That any zone change they wouldn't allow any zone changes for 2 years.
Right.
Because they felt like the city council and building safety and planning was being too loose with zone changes. But if you think about it in the aspect that they have to do these kind of spot changes of zones because they haven't updated it in 60 years.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense, and that would
You kind of have to be loosey-goosey if you're going to be...
Yeah, they're doing...
Or you're going to be outdated.
Yeah. They're doing right now, like, for instance, they created a mixed-use zoning. They have a mixed use for multifamily, medium density, and a mixed use for multifamily, high density. But they just created that in the last 10, 15 years. So there's no property that has that zoning unless it's been changed to that. They didn't go through and make all these R3 zones.
Right.
They call it RAS 3. Or make commercial zones this zone. They just kind of invented it and said, we'll start using this when it works.
Right.
So it's kind of spot zoning, but if you don't do a zone change, you'll never see a mixed use, because there isn't a mixed use zone in the city of LA.
Right.
Except for what they've just created.
Right. Have you run into problems with zoning in terms of like clients, like, I really want to do this, but I can't?
Yes. Yeah, that comes up
a lot, or?
Yeah, that comes up a lot. I mean, I pride myself on being able to tell them up front, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, right. I got a good idea.
Yeah.
If you're in the band U2, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. Was that the Edge thing?
It's the Edge, yeah. He wanted to buy all this real estate in Malibu.
In Malibu, that's right.
And I think it was up on top of the cliff, and I think it was in the burn area or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't do anything.
No, you can't do that Edge.
No. And it's funny, I mean, Malibu... that has all different types of regulations and things you have to watch out for. And there's also a trend that I've seen is the erosion zone, and with global warming and all of that, it's a real issue if you're going to be building a home right next to the water, right? So, I mean, has that changed, or have they updated those laws in your opinion? Or
the city of Malibu is extremely strict as far as what they allow permits for and how long it takes. I mean, I've heard horror stories of people building their dream home for their kids and the house being finally complete when the kids graduate from college. So it can take anywhere from 5 to 20 years.
Wow.
To complete a project, which is not the average person's time frame.
Right.
When they go to, when they call me and I go, well, I really want to build my dream home in Malibu, and I go, great, it should be done in about 10 years. Is that what you were thinking? No, that's I mean, even in just...
How do you feel about living in a trailer?
Yeah, for the foreseeable future while you wait for this to be built.
Right.
Even in the city of LA, in a completely flat lot, you're going to look at probably a year and a half to 2 years before you're moving in. And I think, to me, starting with that is the best way to go whenever anybody approaches me. I say, well, this is the time frame.
Yeah.
Is that what you were thinking? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they're like, no, I thought it'd be done in 6 months. I go, okay, let's
30-day escrow, right? Let's get it going, right?
Right. So, okay, well then let's talk about, you brought up kind of like what can be, what are you calling about? The grade, the
slope.
The slope, yeah, right.
Analysis,
and,
yes.
it's funny. I drive through like Topanga Canyon, or I drive up in the hills or whatever like that. And I kind of glance over when I'm driving and I see these signs, for sale, for sale, for sale. And it's like this steep hill going straight up. I mean, realistically, what are you buying that for? Because, I mean, in theory, can you really grade that? Can you really make something there?
That's a very good question. In reality, yes. You can
really?
build on most any slope. Whether or not it's financially feasible, it comes to question, because you'll go into the Hollywood Hills,
right,
where your price per foot is up around $1,500 to $2,000 a foot,
right,
and that slope might cost $700-800 to build on, but that math's still working out, and that's worth doing.
Right.
But if you're in Topanga Canyon or Woodland Hills or a different area,
right,
where your price per foot isn't as high, well, you can
to
build
shore
on
that
it.
up, to do the geo and do all that kind of stuff.
You're looking at anywhere from $400 and per foot and above to build.
Right.
And anything that has that type of slope, the more severe, as well as the soil, the higher the cost. So it's just a matter of, yes, you can build on it, but would it make any sense, and what would you end up with when you're done, and how much will it cost you? And there's some that are just cliffs that you really can't build on.
Yeah.
But even those are mostly by code. You can't build on them, not just engineering wise. You can't. I mean,
is there a speculative reason that you would be buying that for some reason?
Yeah, there used to be people who would buy them, and there still are. I shouldn't say used to. That buy them and want to hold on to them for the prices to go up and things to appreciate in the area, which made a lot of sense. And I think people made a good deal of money on it throughout the city, and especially in the hills, because you could pick up something cheaper. A lot of people then get it permitted.
Right.
And then sell it with permits, because you've added a lot of value, because you've taken away all those question marks, all that, can I build? How much can I build? How much is it going to, like, you've taken away a good amount of the risk. Now, still somebody's going to eventually have to build it, and that's going to cost far more. So there's a lot of land on the market now that people have done that, and then they price it almost like you don't have to build it now because I've got the permits.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that are priced way higher than they really should be. But the problem with doing this, buying land speculatively now, is, especially in the hills, is that they keep restricting the hillside, how much you can build on a hillside.
Okay.
So if you bought a property, it's a good example, in 2009.
Right.
And you could build a 7,000 square foot house on this hillside that's slow property. You had no intention of doing it, but you knew the area is good, and eventually these prices
somebody's going to catch up. It's going to catch up with you.
It's going to catch up, and you'll catch on and be able to sell it at that time. Well, in 2011, 2012, they put in place a new hillside ordinance, which then, instead of being able to build 7,000, now you can build like 2,500 square feet.
Right.
So my recommendation to people is, when they talk, if you want to do it and get your permits right away and start the process right away, that's a risk that you have to decide if you want to take or not. But if you want to do it and just hold it for 10 years, you're running a real risk that along those 10 years, when you've just been hanging on to it, the zones might change and you might not be able to build as much or anything at that time, because they put in place in 2012 rules as far as how many retaining walls you can have and how many and how tall they can be.
Oh, really?
Not to get too technical, but basically you're going to have 3, and they can each be between like 10 and 12 feet tall.
Right.
So if your slope is greater than 30 to 36 feet high,
right,
well, you can't really...
You're out of luck.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you as you've driven by and seen hillsides that are taller than that.
Yeah.
If you see a for
We have a
sale
couple
sign
of
on
them
it,
around here.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you see a for sale sign on one of them, be very wary.
Right. Interesting. Back to the going back to kind of the inspections part of it. What is they expire, don't they? I mean, in terms, there are things that like they get old, right? They get like where
Yes.
it's been too. Explain that kind of process for the folks out there that basically, okay, you had your inspections done on the property, then maybe you're not. It's taking a long time to get the zoning, whatever, blah. But these things can expire.
Yes. Well, for instance, the soil reports, they don't, as of themselves, expire.
Right.
But
or they get stale, right?
Yeah. When you go to build, they need to be usually within 2 years.
Right.
When you submit them with your permits and everything. So any soil report, even if it's 10 years old, is valuable because it gives you more information. And that's really because the great unknown with land is not knowing. So any more information you have is fantastic.
Sure.
But you're going to have to pay to get them redone. The soil may not really realistically change.
Yeah.
Like if you got a home inspection 10 years later, that home inspection is going to be very, very different.
Right.
The soil inspection may not be very different, but you still have to redo it to apply with updated soil reports with the city.
Right.
Permits expire. The city of LA's, I believe, is for 2 years, and then you can renew it for an additional year, if I'm not mistaken. But that's about right. Yeah.
Right.
So if those expire, and they've completely expired, those plans are basically, to put it bluntly, very nice pictures.
Well drawn pictures.
You can't. If the zones haven't changed, yes, you can reapply, get your permits redone, and you're good.
Right.
But chances are, after 3 years, some element of that permit has changed.
Right.
And so you have to make changes and alter it.
Now, we chatted a little bit earlier about easements.
Mm-hmm.
People having access to across your property in order to get to their property or whatever. But what's fascinating is that people when they buy land, sometimes it's funny, they have these internet things I've seen where it's buy 50 acres in Nevada or whatever, and they don't realize that you have no way to get to it. Like that, you're literally surrounded on all sides, and there is no easement.
Yeah, it's landlocked.
Yeah.
Is the term they use for it. And not only there's properties
here
that you'll see and you're like, oh, that's an amazing price for 20 acres, but you can't
get to
you have
it.
no way of legally accessing your property.
Do you own a helicopter?
Yeah. Right. And then it becomes
personal drone.
Yeah. If you can fly a helicopter and land it on that site.
Yeah, right. Can you build a helipad?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that, how would people what would you recommend in terms of how people can find out, are there easements through my property? And on the other side of that, which, I mean, of course, it's running the title report, but maybe you can go into a little more detail. But also, can I get out or get in?
Well,
what's the best way to find that out?
The best way to find it out, not to say it again, is to go through a realtor or architect or somebody that can help you along the process, because it does get complicated. The first thing I do whenever a piece of land comes on the market and I'm looking at it and I have a client that might be interested, is I look at the actual location of the parcel from the title report, because where they put it on the Zillow or MLS or wherever you're seeing it may not be the actual location of where that lot is.
Right.
And that can tell you for sure if there's a road to it.
Right.
Because you got to start with, is there a road to it? And then work kind of backwards from there.
Yeah.
Like if there's no road to it, okay. Is there a way to get a road to it? Is there what they call a paper street that would be dedicated for a public roadway so I could have access to it? And then if there's not one of those, then you would have to look at the lot. In probably the county of LA can tell you if there's an easement. The city of LA is not so good about it, just when you go into your regular planning or building and safety.
Yeah.
And the easiest way is through a title report to find out if there is an easement for access.
Yeah.
Another thing people think all the time is if there's not an easement, I'll just talk to the neighbor. I'll just know because I'm a good guy. It's going to go great.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talk to him and he's going to give me this easement, or they're required to give me an easement because I have no access to the property without. There's no easement by necessity.
Right.
In the state of California. They don't grant you an easement just because you need one.
Yeah.
And if you think of it on the other side of this, as far as going to talk to the neighbor, what would you say if your neighbor came to me and said, hey, I have no way of getting to my property that I want to build on back here.
Do you mind if I walk through your backyard every day?
Yeah. Can I just have this little piece? Unless it's a very large site or there's some, you're going to need to give them something, probably money.
Yeah.
It would probably be the most legal way to do it. To get that easement.
Right.
Or unless they have something about their property where you can kind of both get easements at the same time that help both of you.
Yeah. Now, we kind of briefly touched upon, we were chatting about doing a perc test to see if you could do septic and that, sometimes the sewer doesn't make it to you. How difficult is it in these kind of areas that is not the very city kind of area, the urban area you were talking about, like more on the outskirts and all that? How difficult is it to get utilities out to you? I mean, is it something that is even worth trying? I mean, or is it better to be self-sufficient?
You'll always need water in some way.
Yeah.
Whether it be the city or a well. Because I know a lot of people talk about the gray water systems where they recycle the water and everything.
Right.
Even if you install one of those, you have to prove that you have water to the property anyways. Even if you'll never need water.
Interesting.
They need to know that there's water. It's not easy to get utilities to a site, but there's other ways around it. As far as for gas, there's propane delivery. You can have a tank and they can refill it.
Right.
You need to have a well or water source somewhere nearby if you're not having county or city water. So that's usually the hardest thing to come by because the propane you can get, electricity is usually fairly easy. I mean, there's power lines overhead.
Right.
Even through pretty rural areas.
Yeah.
And then you can use solar and generators and things like that.
Sure, right.
But really the water is
really
the hardest thing to come by. And now with the drought being over, hopefully that will be a little bit easier because there was a tremendous shortage of water for a long time. Like even if there was a well there, it might not be suitable for drinking.
Yeah. Okay, well, and we're kind of wrapping up here. I wanted to talk a little bit about financing, and Ron, this is definitely something that I think you can definitely have some input on here. But generally with a house, you have they go to lender and say, okay, the house appraised for this, I need to borrow this, whatever. But it's a completely different story in terms of when it comes to vacant land. So. What is your experience? Let's start with you, Zack, just in terms of what is the kind of what you see as the process for getting a loan for vacant land, or do you mostly see cash coming in?
There's a lot of cash coming in, or hard money loans is really the primary thing that you see, again, because most buyers are investors into developers. For the people who want to build their own home, there are land loans that kind of wrap it all in together. The only large institution that I know that still does them is U.S. Bank, and it's a pretty good product. You still have to put down usually 30% instead of your standard 20%. They'll want to see those certain reports that I had mentioned to varying degrees.
So prior to everything.
Yeah, prior to approval.
Got
just
it.
Similar to if a lender wanted to see...
do you have smoke detectors?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Exactly. They want to make sure that you have a reasonable expectation to build on it. And that's usually the minimum. Some of them go as far as that you need to have permits to build.
Right. Oh, really? So that far?
Yeah, which makes for a very long escrow.
I imagine.
Because you're looking at between 6 to 18 months, depending on where and what you're building, unless it's in Malibu, and then you're at years.
Yeah, right.
So... the U.S. Bank is I believe, and maybe you know more, but the
Yeah, Ron,
only
what is your-
major
Yeah, but there's
institution-
another one that I've referred to. So first of all, I don't offer land loans,
Yeah.
right? Nor do I offer construction loans.
Yeah.
But I do refer clients to another bank, Bank of the West, right? So what they want is they want to make sure that the project is permitted, it's been approved, it's basically shovel ready.
Right.
Right. They don't want to just buy, participate in speculative land development and stay
No,
in
but you
escrow
got to see
forever.
the view from this.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, they want shovel ready projects
Right.
that have a specific timeline that have been approved and they're ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, because they don't. I mean, as little as they want to end up with a house that gets foreclosed on, they want even less to foreclose on land.
Yeah,
what are they
right.
going to do with it?
Yeah,
Right,
banks
exactly.
don't want to own land.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Right.
And what I would say in terms of, where I would come into the picture would be once the home is done, right? So if you take a property that's, let's say $1 million and it costs, I don't know, $2-3 million to build the home, get it ready. Well, once the home has the water and all of the other items and all of the nice necessities, and you're ready to go sell it, or you're ready to take the equity out, right? That's where I would come into play, right? So we could do a cash out refi, and they would be able to recoup some of that initial investment.
Got it. So in terms of trends that you're seeing, I mean, you kind of mentioned that because the condos are kind of so difficult because of insurance issues and things like that, is it really that you're seeing more rentals buying buying vacant land and developing on it, or is there any other trends that you're seeing?
Yes, there's a lot of rentals.
Yeah.
A lot of building to rent. The for sale products are mostly coming in what's called small lot subdivisions right now, which are in essence townhouses with 3 inches in between each one.
That blows me away when I see those.
Yeah,
It's like
that's-
you look at it, that looks like a townhouse. No, there's a little groove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just close escrow on one of those,
Yeah.
right? So you're like, you could touch your neighbor, but it's
Yeah.
technically a single family residence, right?
It's
Or a condo.
Why are they
depending
what
on
are they
how it
gaining
is.
from that?
they're gaining the depending on the size, because they're all single family houses. You don't need to have an HOA, because each one of these have their own their own house. So if there's no HOA, there's no group of homeowners who are
Right.
looking to sue you.
Right.
The city likes them. Can't really explain why the city's so into them, but the city and developers like them. And from my experience, at least, all the buyers see them as townhouses. You're not really fooling. These are
You're not fooling
townhouses.
anybody.
This is
No.
a townhouse, which
Yeah.
is fine. I mean, that's nicer in a lot of ways. It's more of your own space than a condo. You park at the bottom.
Yeah.
You've got 2 or 3 floors usually from there.
Yeah.
So you can make them very nice. It's not that, but they're townhouses. They
Yeah.
aren't really too much different from town, except that you don't have the HOA fees, which is nice.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, because whenever you go into a condo deal, it's one of the things you have to look out for. Are there any pending lawsuits? And that's usually because against the HOA, and I can see that people wouldn't want to hassle with that.
Exactly. And so
Makes total
that
sense.
kind of makes it more palatable for the developers to build higher density for sale products.
Right. And just to wrap up, so let's say I'm in the market to buy some vacant land. Any kind of last parting advice that you say to folks, other than call Zack King?
I would say that it's super exciting, and you should be, and to not be intimidated by the process,
Yeah.
but to be prepared that it's not going to be super easy. So
You have to kind of enjoy the adventure.
yeah, and there's a personality type that loves that.
Yeah.
And it can be really rewarding and fun to see something that wasn't there and you're part of building it together. That's why
Yeah.
I love doing it.
Yeah.
So I would just take a deep breath
Yeah.
and be ready for the unexpected and be cautious but not scared.
And what about the other side of that coin for the sellers?
For the sellers,
Yeah. What do you recommend for them?
I would recommend that they be realistic and know that whomever's buying that is taking the majority of the risk on. As far as to build something is going to cost a lot more in most cases than the cost of that piece of land. So just because the house next to you sold for $7 million doesn't mean your vacant lot is worth $4 million.
Right.
Somebody has to build whatever is next to it.
And take a hassle on of going through all
the
those
time
rings
and the risk
loops.
And not knowing where the market will be when whatever is done, whether it be apartments or a house.
Yeah.
You start building like I said, it's going to take between 2 and 3 years, even on a flat lot.
Yeah.
So where's the market going to be in 3 years?
I mean, you're literally like you're having to like call a psychic and shoot. You only have one time to aim.
Yeah. And
wow.
You have to really know that you can withstand it if it goes
the other way.
It goes the other way, exactly.
Wow. Interesting. Zack, thank you so much for being here. I mean, some amazingly great advice and information about vacant land that, so many folks, I think, don't really even think. They pass by it on the road and they don't even think about all of the stuff that goes into making a transaction like that happen. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And do you want to give your license number just so in case for official purposes?
Yes. Zack King, VRE 0188-2407. And you can reach me at 818-825-7388.
Great. And you can also contact me, and I'll be happy to get you in touch with Zack if you have any vacant land needs, sell or buy. So thank you so much for coming. But that's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them for us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Clarified Realty Podcast, all one word. If you have any questions about real estate or you're looking for someone to help you buy or sell a home, please email me directly at tom@clarifiedrealty.com. I'll definitely get right back to you as soon as possible. For more exclusive bonus content and advice between episodes, please check out our website, www.clarifiedrealty.com. Also on our homepage, you'll find links to helpful buyer and seller guides that can give you some great information for starting your home buying or home seller process. So definitely check those out. I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram as well. My handle for all three of those is @ClarifiedRealty. Please leave feedback and reviews on iTunes or in the comments section on our page. Together we're stronger, so if you have any questions or ways that we can make this podcast better, please let us know. My amazing theme song, Hey Now, is from the band Wolf. That's Wolf with 2 Fs, and please go like them and check them out on SoundCloud. We'll also leave a link to the song in the credits if we can. They rock so hard they make any vacant land they're standing into a concert hall. And just a little disclaimer, Ron and I are licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate. My license number is 01715353. Ron's is?
Guarantee rate, NMLS 2611, NMLS ID 558706, California.
The advice we give is only for properties located in the state of California. For all other states, please contact your local real estate agent or real estate professional. Well, that's about it for me. Ron, you good?
Yeah, I'm going to go buy some land.
Let's go buy some land. Come on, everybody. Thanks for coming, everybody. And remember, the greatest thing you could do is make someone feel at home. Take care, and we'll see you next week.